one. This is the 8-9 combo. I am Brett McKay, and it's with great relief that I'm joined this week by my co-host, back from the dead, recovered from the manliest of all the man flus, Harry Jones. Hello, mate. Welcome back to the land of the living.
How's it, Brett? I'm going to sound a little bit funky today because
I sound a little bit funky.
Yeah, I lost my soul, and I saw it in the loo. I always wondered if I had a soul or not. You know, the whole body, soul, Gnostic heresy and all that. But I never had seen my soul before, but I saw it this weekend as I spent 30 hours worshiping the toilet porcelain gods. I think I was inspired by Warren Gatlin, who looks like he is just got some kind of evil bacteria running through him. Speaking of, I've been interested in the body as I've been almost dead and come back to life. Even though we are an 8 and a 9, continents apart, my friend, we share 99.9% of our DNA. Did you know that? My DNA and your DNA differ in only 0.1%, but that's 3 or 4 million places because we have so much DNA. So that sounds like a lot, but it's only about 100 mutations, and these very personal genetic instructions are not inherited from your parents per se. And I say all this to say this explains Joe Marler. Took a long way around for that one, but I've been demented, so.
In ways that I don't fully understand and I'm not prepared to ask. But I'm glad to hear that you are healthy again. One quick question. Your soul, does it contain carrots?
Oh no, my soul is full of meat. It's a carnivorous soul, for sure.
Of course. No, well, thank you so much for finding episode 6 of the 8-9 Combo Rugby podcast. It's all thanks to the Sports Social Podcast Network, and you might know us from the Raw Rugby podcast, but we're here under our new banner on all the pod platforms: Spotify and Apple, YouTube, and its musical offspring. The End of Days on Google Podcasts, Audible, Amazon, iHeart, literally wherever you get your podcasts. So please do like, follow, subscribe, rate, review, and do share it all. It all really does help. And mate, we say welcome back to listeners who have joined us from our previous home. But for those who have come upon us on this new journey of ours for the first time, what is the 8-9 combo all about? What's it mean? Who's the 8? Who's the 9?
Okay, so I'm the 8, which is readily apparent. Although our guest to come this week is gonna have to do some backtracking from a team he picked in which he made me a wing. But I'm definitely an 8, and sometimes confused as a lock or a prop who ate each other.
That's offensive for wings, surely.
You are the 9. You are the guy always making me short, sharp, release, go now, use it now. But I mean, look at 8-9 combinations are great. Yes. They are understudied, undervalued, but they are the core. They are the spiral around which the whole team revolves. I want to call your attention, my dear listeners, to Louis Picamoles, a number 8, really one of the great number 8s, a Montpellier guy, and we could say he's the goat farmer. He's a goat farmer. He has. Since he's retired from rugby, he's been farming goats, and he's been running for office now on a ticket of making farms great again in France. And he, an 8, is trying to ally with a great number 9, Emmanuel Macron, the current president, who married his dance instructor. So you have an 8-9 combination right there. Look at that. We are powerful.
Is that an early 8-9 of the week?
Yes, that's the 8-9 of the week. I wanted people just to think that we're not just playing rugby nowadays. We're taking over. Yeah,
we are. We're taking over the world. Well, I'm glad to get 8-9 of the week out of the way. We move to the Cheers and Jeers, mate, which is the new name for the same way we've started pods for, I don't know, eons. And the cheers this week, mate, go to the Rugby Australia accountants who on Monday, Australian time, solved all of RA's financial issues by officially putting tickets on sale for the 2025 Lions series, of which, hence me wearing this jersey. And let me just say about the prices, they are eye-watering. It is crazy expensive, like $400 plus for gold tickets for the test matches, and I stopped reading at that point. It is just incredible. And with ticket prices that high for 6 tour games and 3 tests, I expect that rugby in this country will be swimming in riches by the end of the week, mate. Or everything is fixed.
We got to tap into this somehow. You know where we are on our travel budgets. Although I really wasted our travel budget this weekend. I couldn't go because I was finding my soul. And so Proper Rugby Kino won the Celtic haiku competition with a brilliant haiku. He took his old man to the game in my place.
So good.
And they got to watch their beloved Ireland repeat and now go for the threefer, which has never been done. My jeers, I was in a bad mood all weekend. I just watched Mani Miafu, who I'd featured in my ongoing and very sporadic series of Aussies doing well abroad. Melbourne Manny, who's the Warren Oz. He was what's the Melbourne Rising. He was he played a little bit here and there, and he just slipped through the cracks. Ended up thinking about NFL for a while. Made some tapes of his best plays in Australia. Sent them to Toulouse, who somehow said, I think we can take this body shape and teach it to mow over Maro Itoje. So twice in the game in Le Crunch, which was the game of the week, Mani Mafu straight up with Itoje set. One time a little bit off, but one time really set. And Itoje is one of the great head-to-head stoppers in the game. Bounces him. If I'm a coach, that's the best play in the world. That's what I want. Yeah. I want your defenders on their arse. I want their best defender on their arse. It answers 1,000 questions. Australian rugby needs to stop letting tight five, big boys who they think are too fat, escape. Put them on a nutrition plan. Get your next Will Skelton. That way, when Will Skelton goes down in the World Cup, you've got a Miafu to stick in there. Depth at lock, the corner of the realm. You give me 9 subs, I'm putting another lock in there.
Makes sense. And I'm glad that you got where you're going, because I was starting to wonder, where's the Jews in this? But it's all right. I got you. I'm back on board. Yeah,
it's all wings, league wings. Guys, 21-year-olds who can jump over buildings. How about a guy who can bounce Maro Itoje twice in a game and look like he could do it 5 more times?
Yeah, no, that is absolutely worth farming, is what that is worth. Mate, let us get on to this week's guest, someone we've not spoken to since early in our first year, if you can believe it, who has gone on to much bigger and better things since then. He is on 8-9 combo debut after this. And we bring
Big
him
music
in right now. I guess this week has been around for a little while, but he exploded into the minds and the screens of rugby fans during last year's Rugby World Cup with his excellent analysis show Beyond 80. He's taken it to beyond new levels this year completely in 2024 with the addition of another friend of the pod in Bernard Jackman. Please welcome rugby writer and excellent analyst, Sam Larner. Hello, mates.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me, Black and Hallie.
The beard is back, and the beard is lustrous. Tell us, how is that regimen going? What are you putting on that?
Well, that's a good question. So there's, it's based. I think it looks bigger because the hedge there's less on the hedge, so that's always helpful to make the beard look a little bit better. But in addition to that, just a little bit of beard oil. It goes a long way, and kind of comb it through every now and then. But I'm not that precious about it. It's probably going to get a little bit of a cut soon because I'm starting to find stuff in it. As you would have been probably on the weekend, Charlie.
Yeah. That would be a good shtick for part of your programs with Bernard Jackman. You just find things, and here's a stat I pulled out of my beard.
It is something from 3 weeks ago. Yeah, mate. I can't believe it's nearly 2 years since we've spoken to you, but absolutely take our genuine admiration for Beyond 80. It's been a wonderful addition to RugbyPass TV, and it's great to have you back on our show. And I suppose I've got to drop a full disclosure here, Harry. Now that I've joined RugbyPass, Sam and I are technically colleagues, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we're outnumbering Harry on the show today.
Yeah,
you got legit. You guys have sold out. So Sam, I always loved the way you described rugby. It feels like you're on a mission, almost like that mission civilisatrice, where you're trying to explain terminology, lingo, jargon. And there is a lot of rugby that is obscure. I mean, when you actually talk about how to defend a box kick, or you talk about sort of what front football really is, a drift defense, a chop shackle, is that something you sat down one day and just said, why is this so obscure, and try to get across to all of us, or what was the drive behind that?
Yeah, so a little bit of that, to be honest. I mean, I remember watching a game with my dad, and he's 62. He's been playing for 20, 30 years of his life. He's been watching the game for 50 odd years of his life, and we were watching this game, and he was asking me kind of why are the forwards judging these groups of 3 and what's going on with that? And I thought that if he doesn't get it, then there's going to be a huge number of other people who don't know what a pod is, or don't know what a 1-3-3-1 is, or even just the really simple stuff, don't know what a blitz is, don't know what a drift is. And so I think that for me, a big part of what I wanted to do is just make the game a little bit more accessible, because I think that too often we're at the whim of maybe some not particularly informed pundits, and so if that's the only way you're getting your rugby education, I think you can end up perhaps down a wrong path there.
We often find ourselves caught in a trap, I suppose, of assumed knowledge, don't we? And we all do it writing stuff, and we absolutely do it when we're explaining things, that we are assuming that the people that we're talking to know what we're talking about. So for you to take that idea and then to actually put it to screen like you've done so well over the last 12 months or so, Harry, we talked about services to rugby on last week in our Games of the Week show, but this is genuinely a service to rugby, and it's probably long overdue, I think.
No, Sam, I love it. And I mean, I know you give a lot back to the game. You're grassroots level. You're doing work for Calm and for Dottie Weir. And I think everyone should go on the Hills Are Murder, the Hill Valley Classic, and try to contribute to Sam's effort and go out there and ride with you. I'm going to plan to do that. But, I think there's something about democratizing it, maybe. There's so much of old boy punditry where, first of all, sometimes they're talking about things that were 13 years out of date. They're going to play flatter to the line or something. I mean, not even understanding out the back passes, not even understanding anything about width and space anymore. But it seems like you and Birch in particular are doing this hard work. What goes next? So what's the big plan? What's the Sam Larner plan to dominate the airwaves?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I guess I probably should have more of a plan. I think a lot of stuff has come to me. Like, I've obviously done a lot on Twitter, on X, on out there, but a lot of this stuff is people coming to me and saying, do you fancy doing this? Which is great, but obviously you're always relying on people keeping on doing that. So I would love to do more of the Beyond 80s. I really think there's a place for actually detailed analysis, which is accessible to anyone. And I think if you watch, Monday Night Football in the UK on the Premiership, that's incredibly accessible in that anyone can watch it. Anyone who has Sky or is in a pub can watch it. And what you're getting is some of the best minds in the game doing very detailed analysis on what they're actually seeing. And I don't think that we have enough of that in rugby. We have some fantastic writers. You had Charlie Morgan on a couple of weeks ago. Absolutely brilliant. And he's fantastic at breaking the game down. So we do have these minds in the game, but I think often there's a nervousness to let people just be deep in their analysis. And so, you often see ITV's broadcasts, for example, very, very seldom do you get more than kind of 5 minutes of actual analysis in there. And it doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to be stats heavy, but I think it does need to, you need to explain the game. And once people explain the game, it becomes much more interesting.
We see that all too often, Harry, don't we? We see that, part of a broadcast, they will try and get into something, but they've only got 4 minutes. They've only got a real 4-minute window between breaks, between segments to do it. And so they sort of get into it, but without really getting into it and getting to the bottom of it. And I think we all sort of walk away feeling, I don't know, a bit underdone by it sometimes.
I mean, we're a bit betwixt and between on TV because they're trying to keep it moving. They're trying to have snappy repartee between 4 or 5 people and develop a fake camaraderie that they can, sort of like build a sitcom around. But then they also want to go, explain the scrums. And then a guy has to somehow go, explain how a bind works and how a shift works and where the, fulcrum of the axis of the force goes. I thought Michael Cheika did it best on his brief stint on TV because I think some coaches really are good at making things accessible, which makes sense for Michael Cheika, who's coached in so many different languages and continents. He's got to break it down. There are other coaches like that. Laurie Fisher is a wonderful guy to talk about arrival at rucks. And once you know what you're looking at, I think it's more suspenseful and more interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, a kicking duel is interesting if you know what you're looking at. If
you know what the context is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sam, how much of you wanting to explain things was about you learning it at the time? And I asked that thinking about my own experience as a sport reporter in a previous life, and I started covering basketball all of a sudden, and I'd go to a press conference and a coach would start talking this jargon, and I'm hearing these words and not having a clue of what he means. And so suddenly I find myself looking up what a pick and roll is.
He jumped the screen.
Yeah. Right. That's what it is. Guy stands there, pops it in, pop around the back. Yeah, right. I got it. And so then I've just got to start thinking, how do I then explain that so that if I can understand it, so if someone else who's in exactly my situation can understand it the same way?
Yeah, there's a big part of that. I think, to be honest, the reason I started doing it really is because I started from an analytical perspective and thinking I just wanted to know what was actually happening in games, because you read something like Moneyball. There's a great book I read called Scorecasting, which looks through a bunch of different sports and tries to work out kind of the hidden secrets of them, really. And I thought there's very little of that in rugby. Like there was this idea that if you make more tackles than the opponent in the first half, you'll tire in the second half, which maybe that was true at a point. I think it's definitely not true anymore. But there's those kind of truisms which you think, okay, well, that's clearly what's going on. But I really just wanted to understand it from a data perspective. And then as you dig into it more, you start to realize actually there's, you're learning stuff, but also there's stuff here that's kind of obvious, but is not explained. And I think that so I certainly have a lot of imposter syndrome of thinking, well, I'm not a professional. I've never played at professional level. My playing experience is well, a lot in terms of years, but very little in terms of high level.
Yeah.
And so although I'm working with clubs and working with players has helped eradicate a little bit of that imposter syndrome, there's still an element of, well, if it's between me and Birch, I'm always going to be the one who's doing the, oh, what does this mean? And he's going to be the one doing the in-depth kind of analysis, which I think is as it should be. Like, people quite rightly, if they don't know who you are, they're going to defer to the person that they do know. And I'm very happy to play the side role of just making people engaged and asking the questions that perhaps fans think they should know but are too afraid to ask. And so I definitely think there's an element of thinking, well, I know this, I really want to share that with everyone else.
But there's an aspect of that that's, Birch is the most generous of pundits, and he loves insights that he hasn't picked up on. I think that's why he's into horse racing and rugby, because he just kind of loves to learn. But you look at a Jacques Nienaber and Rassi Erasmus, that the scripts are flipped. Rassi is the big picture guy with the crazy vision, and Jacques, who never played rugby at any high level, rips it apart from a physio's brain. I think rugby is a little bit stuck in the mud on it. You have to have been a former Test international with at least, whatever. Some of the best coaching minds are these analyst people who are looking at things a different way.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, look at like you mentioned Nienaber there. You mentioned Michael Checker there already. You look at Dan McKellar, didn't play professional rugby. You look at Les Kiss. His background was rugby league before he became a defence coach. So
what a turnaround Les Kiss has made! My God,
absolutely. He's got Queensland absolutely humming now. So it's the different perspectives is where the game.
Yeah, and so Sam, you and I have had discussions online about the stats, and part of it's that template. These are the stats we're going to care about, and I've always thought rugby is more. It's a difficult stat game, actually. But I think it's not like tennis or cricket where you can put it inside templates. But in every given quarter or half or game, different stats have mattered, and you have to be able to flip it and have the insight stats. Like the 3 or 4 things that really matter this time aren't that at all, because the 21 to turnovers to 7 turnovers canceled all that out. That kind of, flip on the script, have someone in the background doing that, as opposed to just saying, well, it looks like they had a lot of ball and a lot of territory. Why didn't they score?
Yeah, I agree.
Because Tommy Raffel took the ball 5 times.
Yeah, exactly. I think fundamentally there's some core stats which really matter. So, for example, 22 entries is a basic one. You have to have more than your opponent, and you have to do more with them. And you might have a game where your opponent has. Well, actually, we did have a game on Saturday where Ireland has, I think, 8 22 entries, and sorry, Ireland had 15 22 entries, and Scotland had 3. And so obviously Ireland ended up winning, but they were won by a lot less than you'd imagine that difference would be. And so there's in individual games, there's going to be stuff where across the whole season, there's absolutely no way that in a whole season you could survive if you had 12 fewer 22 entries every game. But individual games, those things will matter. So I think there's some fundamental big stats, and actually I'm not that evangelical about stats, to be honest, in that I think that they tell us something that we can't see with our naked eye always. I had a conversation with someone on the weekend about George Ford, and they say, oh, but he always misses tackles. So you think, well, we just fundamentally prove that's not true, because we know that we have a missed tackle stat, so we can see if that's true or not. And he actually makes a lot more than all other fly halves.
But a good stat we saw today, which was George Ford's depth of passing per round, and you saw it go from 1.4 to 1.3 to 1 meter to 0.8. That is an unbelievable stat on percentage basis. It's half the time. Like, that is everything to Ollie Lawrence. That's everything to a guy bursting across the seams. You give Ben Earl or Ollie Lawrence that type of break on your defender, they're going to look silly.
Absolutely, and that was a fantastic stat, because I think it tells someone something really obvious. It's very clear what is being said in that statistic, and you can also imagine, if you've got a little bit of rugby watching knowledge, not necessarily playing knowledge, but a bit of watching knowledge, it's very obvious what that actually means in terms of the reality of having a bit less time for the 10, but more time for everyone outside of him, and just making the defence make their leads earlier. And so I think that stuff is brilliant. I think there's lots of really good stats out there. And I think if you're saying something unequivocally, which is what we often see with pundits, this team are the best in the world, these are the worst in the world, he's rubbish, he's amazing, then that should be clear in the stats. And I just think they add an extra layer, really. But I'm not someone who thinks that, who thinks that the stats will tell you absolutely everything. You do need some video, you need some other bits as well.
So what's a stat, Sam, that you think the average person watching a game at a decent level, where you're going to get access to that sort of stat, what's the stat that they should keep an eye on through a game that is generally pretty reliable for you?
So that's a good question. So I would say kick meters is a good stat because essentially that's territory. It's how far you're kicking the ball, and also as a total. It's not necessarily that interesting as a per kick basis, but as a total, it's quite interesting because essentially rugby is just a territory game, and if you're kicking 50 meters and the opponent's kicking 10 meters, then they have to go 40 meters more to score the try. So that's a really good one. I would say the set piece stats are always good. It's a bit hard when they do it as a percentage. What you really want is a kind of an outcome in terms of what number of scrums are lying out, so if they had clean ball from.
Because
it is hard to explain to some people how a penalty scrum in midfield is just about the best outcome for a team ever, right? Your forwards feel good, they march slowly to the line out, you get all that time to talk about it, and you're in the 22.
Absolutely. In fact, one that we don't have, but actually was starting to come in at this Six Nations, is territory gained for penalties, because I think that is huge. Because if you look at, you imagine all the penalties Scotland conceded on their own line, didn't get a yellow card until quite late on, and the territory they conceded would be 2 meters maybe, if that. And so those penalties are not that costly. Whereas some of the Scottish penalties earlier in the tournament, where they were turning quite a difficult exit into an easy, unopposed kick downfield where you get the ball back at the line out, that's a massive change of territory. So I think something as simple as territory is one that I will look at a lot. But also, it gets a bad rap, but meters carried as well can be really interesting, because people say, well, fullbacks just get an unopposed lung up, which is true, but
True.
so does the other team's fullback as well. So it balances itself out.
Yeah, but I think stats belong, especially on an individual basis, belong in the areas like you're comparing fullbacks to fullbacks. For example, rating an open sider is such a difficult endeavor. I like to look at locks because it's really easy. Almost every lock has to do the same things over and over and over and over and over, and they just get busy. There's a few anomalies. Eben Etzebeth chases kicks, but or there might be some that actually lift in a lot instead of be lifted. But for the most part, you look at an open sider, the ability to choose the rucks to slow, to go for it, to listen to the ref, to come off of it, then make the careful steal, that kind of thing is very difficult to quantify. It looks like, oh, you got 5 steals in the tournament, Tommy Raffel. No. It was 5 steals and 30 slows, and the threat of slowing on the next one that made someone kick instead of run.
Yeah. So conversely, in following up, Sam, is there a stat that you think we should be seeing more of and should be made more readily available, because it does actually tell part of the picture that we're not really getting in your generally accessible public stats?
Yeah, so I think Hallie makes a really good point there about compete at a breakdown, slowing it down. We do have we have average luck speed. It's slightly confused by very slow box kicks. So if you have 20 really quick looks and then 1 really slow box kick, it might be the same as like 20 medium quick looks.
Yes.
So something like luck speed is a percentage under 3 seconds. We do have that as a stat, but it's not shown that much on on broadcast. What would be amazing would be a phase count where we get, obviously that phase count only really kicks in maybe after 5 or 6 looks. But a phase count where underneath it tells you how many of those are lightning quick looks. So how many of those were under 3 seconds? Because then you get the idea of a stone kind of tumbling down the hill of we've had 10 phases and 9 of them are being super quick. So this is this is dangerous.
Even if it added, even if you just had the ground made by those. So if you've just ticked over to 20 phases and they've made 35 meters, but then the other team comes back and they have 20 phases and they make 5 meters. Yeah, you're going to get a picture there as well.
Absolutely. I feel, I'm not sure if I'm making this up. I'm sure there was a situation where they put in, was it the World Cup actually, where they put in a line where the maul started and then a line where it finished. You can't remember. Which I thought was quite effective. I think it would be better if they did that in open play as well. It gets a bit confusing. The simplicity of rugby is that the pitch is basically very simple, and so once you start putting in kind of lines, and especially when it moves a lot, I think that could be challenging. But something like that, meters gained, I mean, we have that in rugby league where meters gained on the possessions, so something like that could be really helpful.
On French TV they have brilliant graphics. If you just watch top 14 matches in France and you're watching how they present it, it's amazing the level of camera work and stat work they have on contestables, kick contestables. They keep a running tally on that. They make it dramatic every time a box kick comes up. They make box kicks exciting. And they build around. It's not like, oh my God, another box kick. Like they make the box jeopardy, where when you're receiving the box kick, you're scared. I think that's brilliant. I think building the drama around it. Now, the French TV producers never have any footage when it's a test match and there's a contentious call. But they have 1,000. They have even a camera under the ground, when it's for fun.
We can show you this box kick from 35 angles, but if you want to see that high shot, sorry.
We've drilled holes in the ground and we can see where the ball is grounded under, but not if it's Scotland.
Sorry, we can't see that arm over the neck. Post-contact meters is an interesting one for me. It comes up in, I think we often hear it in conversation, but we don't often see the numbers attached to it. So that's a classic case of the broadcasters having a different set of stats to what we're seeing at home. But again, it tells you so much in that if you can look at someone like Harry Wilson talking about Queensland before.
Yeah, for number eights have to have
80 and 100 metres a gain. I mean, you're thinking, wow, he's making some serious ground. But then you find out that on an average carry, he's making 2 and 3 metres post-contact. That's where you can genuinely see the worth of someone's carry. And so you'd love to see that sort of stat made more available. I think that would be hugely valid.
Yeah, I think also it makes sense to tie these to some little, because we've got plenty of time in the rugby game. We've got kind of the other half that's not ball in play you can use for shining a light on this kind of stuff. So it'd be great in terms of, you talk about post-contact meters, you say, so-and-so's made the most this game, and here's some examples, and here's an example of why that matters. Like, why does it matter that he's made 2 meters over the gain line compared to a fullback who maybe made 50 meters? You think about Ireland, Scotland, and some of those Scottish carries towards the end off the line out, where they might make 20 meters, but it's all controlled. It's like, well, someone would go, well, that's better. Surely 20 meters is better than the 2 meters he's made post contact. But you could then do a little bit of analysis showing why that matters. And I think one of the concerns that I have is that, at least in the UK, I'm not sure if this is necessarily the case around the world, but certainly in the UK, they have this theory that someone's mum might be watching who not really into rugby, but you need to keep her engaged. And so you need to pitch it at a level that someone who doesn't really care about rugby but will maybe be doing something else, then we'll slowly kind of turn our attention to it. And I think the problem is it falls between the two, because it's not appealing to people who know about the game, who want to know a bit more. And for the people who don't know about the game, for example, I would say I've got into baseball, I've got into American football, despite having no previous, not growing up with any knowledge of them. And when I watch those broadcasts, I don't sit there and go, quarterback rating, I don't know what it is, I'm going to turn off because I don't know what that is. Or a wide receiver, I don't know who that is, I'm just going to turn off. They expect you to keep up. And I think that there should be more of that, certainly in the UK, where if you're watching rugby, great. Like, we're not going to belittle you. We're not going to, we're not going to be annoyed because you don't know about the game. But we are going to talk about it in a way that we're engaged, we're excited, we're enthusiastic, and you're expected to keep up.
And there is a perfect break right there. That's a really, really good chat. That's a really good chat. I've really enjoyed that. Now let's talk Six Nations.
Six Nations.
Now let's get into it. Sam, we've seen the end of what has been a great Six Nations tournament. Surprises most weeks and to the very end. What have been the big lessons learned out of this year's tournament particularly?
Yeah, so I think it's been a fascinating one because we've had 7 weeks of, 5 weeks of matches, 7 weeks in total. And some of the changes in trajectories of some of these teams have been unbelievable. If you think where England started, where Italy started, and where they finished, and then on the flip, where Scotland started and where Wales started and where they finished, there's been some enormous shifts. And France as well. They've gone up and down the whole way through the tournament. So I think there's been some real changes there. I think if you look at Ireland, obviously they'll be disappointing not to get the Grand Slam, but if you look where they are and where they could have been, without Sexton, with a few guys missing, a few guys aged out, having to blood some new guys, they've basically done the perfect job. Really, they're in a position now where I feel like even if Omani does retire, which it looks likely he will, you don't feel that concerned. Really, you feel like they've just got this conveyor belt.
No,
just keep
it feels
going.
like there's someone ready to come in, doesn't it? Yeah. And they've sort of, you talk about France being up and down. Ireland have just been constant at the top. They've literally been the benchmark for everyone else in the competition. It has been fascinating. Where's it going to rank in terms of the last few years' tournaments? There's been plenty of discussion about it being the best Six Nations in, insert time frame here, and however you quantify that, I'll never know. But what's your gut feel?
It's an interesting one because we started with that Ireland-France game where France was so poor and Ireland so good that it felt like, well, this is just done. This is just the end of the tournament, really.
Starting graving it now. Yeah,
exactly. And then I thought the second week was probably the weakest of the 5 rounds, but then it's just accelerated from then. And so I think it's a bit of a difficult one because, I think a lot of people's minds might have been made up in those first 2 weeks of, post-World Cup, a bit of a damp squib. But now I think those last 3 weeks have been unbelievable. And Italy getting their 2 wins and a draw. I think France finding it. That game on Saturday to end the Super Saturday with France beating England was absolutely astonishing. I think the best game since the World Cup. And then I think in the World Cup we had two of the best games I've ever seen. So it's just been sensational, that trajectory. So I think for me, I would struggle to think of a better one. I think you always get the slight World Cup hangover, but I think I'd struggle to think of a better Six Nations, at least in recent years.
That's the key there, isn't it, Harry? Like that, it's the year after Six Nations. There would be so many reasons for all teams to just go, let's just retreat a bit, let's rebuild, reset, try new things, try new patterns, try new players. But it's been great. It's been really good. And I can't quite work out whether it's been made as great as it has been because of, Scotland and Italy, or actually if it's been that way because England have found some serious form and have finished the tournament really strongly.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll insert my caveats first. It's the greatest annual test tournament. It's the tribalism is unparalleled.
Yeah.
I love it. I was there for Calcutta Cup, bathe in it. It's unbelievable pageantry and all that. I think England saved the tournament because I think if England had been swept aside by Ireland, no matter what would have happened on final day, I think it would have been viewed as too much of a cakewalk for Ireland. Ireland was unaffected by the quarterfinal loss, whereas the French seemed to be really hungover. England was betting in a defensive system that took several rounds, and I think the attack only really kicked in and scored 7 tries in the final 2 matches against the 2 best teams. And then you had Wales doing whatever they're doing right now, like a doom's walk, the switcheroo with Italy. I think Italy and England saved the tournament. Italy's rise, where they switched places with Wales and became Wales, and then England up a bit. It covered over for Scotland's woeful inconsistency thing, where they just have this golden generation but no cups and 7 years as a coach. That he seems way too. He's okay with losing. And then we have what is it? I think the French are just a big question to me right now. At their best, they look unbelievable, but they let in so many points. They just let tries be scored sometimes from inattention. So I don't know, Sean Edwards, what's going on there. But I would say historically we'll look back and say it was close, so that's good. Most games came down to it. And then we had, but Ireland's point differential was so different from everyone else's. So for me, the big takeaway was Ireland answered the big question. They stood shoulder to shoulder. It's unbelievable to repeat, hard to repeat in sport. And that young 10 was the big story. Young Joe and young Jack, like those 2 guys slotted in, and it looked like it didn't matter. What do you think, Sam?
It looked like they'd played 40 tests already.
Like, Sam, didn't it look like the Irish defense was unbelievable? Like, I think their defense stepped up. That's a proper defense now. Leinster tying into Ireland. I just cannot wait to see what it looks like in South Africa.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that as well. That it looked like they played 40 tests. And in theory, they kind of did. Like, if you look at Jack Crowley, the amount of games he's played at a high level in Leinster, and he just gets slotted into the Ireland team, and you compare that to, say, Cam Wingett, who's played, in fact, Cam Wingett, Alex Mang, and Mackenzie Martin, when they made their Welsh Test debuts, they had combined 32 club caps, which is less than Crowley has had just by one person. And so I think that what Ireland have done really well is they just bring these guys through at the club level to the point where you're pretty sure you know what they're going to deliver at the international level, and then you just drop them in, and then they basically there's not really a risk of them sinking. They're kind of just going to swim. And I think that other teams don't necessarily have that. And I think that, we can talk about Wales. Like, if you look at their, why are they where they are? I think a lot of people have been quite relaxed about it's a young Welsh team, and it is a young Welsh team. And they individually have done well, or a number of them individually have done well. However, you have to question, why are Wales in the state that they're in? Like, why has this? It's not a shock that Gambigga retired. It's not a shock that maybe it's a shock that North has retired a little bit early, but it's not a shock that he's retired. It's not a shock that Alan Wynne-Jones has retired, and yet there's not been any real succession planning in this time.
No.
And now there's a bunch of guys being flung in who are trying their hardest and actually doing quite well, but they have almost no.
But they're not quite
professional
ready.
experience.
I regularly, you're talking about Crowley there, Sam, I regularly cite the difference and similarities between Marcus Smith and Noah Lolosio. They're 6 months apart in age, but they made their sort of professional debuts around the same time or within a few months of each other. And by the time, Noah Lolosio's played, I don't know, 20 odd tests, 50 or 60 Super Rugby games, Marcus Smith is double that.
Yeah.
Like they just play so much more rugby in the north, and it's a huge advantage.
And it's like you throw in Jack Crowley, and I think when he played against the French, he only had a couple of minutes of Six Nations rugby, but they did trust him. And it reminds me of a young Andre Pollard who was thrown in against the All Blacks at age 20. And so now he has his body of work. He's 30 right now. And that's not even that old, but to trust someone early, it looks like Farrell and the guys around him, they really do trust their young. They put Joe McCarthy in, and James Ryan was a bench player. That's almost unbelievable in most places where they almost honor incumbency over, who really is coming on. So I wanted to ask you, Sam, about the ruck cleaning, which is one of those, esoteric things they don't talk about too much. But Ireland is the cleanest team in the world. It cleans the most rucks. It carries the most. It requires its big guys to go clean rucks, phase 4, 5, 6. How are they doing that? Is it because it's just keeping it close? Is short passes? How are they able to do that much cleaning when refs are going to reward the guy who gets over the ball?
Yeah, so I guess for some stats, they top the Six Nations table in terms of 0 to 3 second looks. 56% of theirs were within that time period, which is unbelievable. And that is, if look speed is something that you're not familiar with, it's basically the engine of good attack. Because if you can't get quick look speed, you can't get anything else off the back of that, because you need essentially amazing ball carriers. Whereas if you're getting quicker than 3 seconds, you need good or decent ball carriers to beat a backwards retreating defence. So just from that perspective, I also think Ireland have had by far the most sub 5 metre passes in the whole tournament. And if you look at their game plan, which I think their attack is maybe not the best in the world, but the most aesthetically beautiful in the world. It looks like a Swiss watch, kind of fine-tuned, everything just works perfectly. And you realise that if you're a forward, you tip to another forward, he's going through a gap because of that short pass, because you're getting him just on the outside shoulder. So he's already going through a gap, so he's already getting over the gain line. And then you're only a couple of metres away, and so you swing round and clear that out. And then, because it's only been a couple of 5 metre passes, your nine is maybe 10 metres away and is there in a couple of seconds, and then you can play it away. And so if you actually, one of the teams I cite quite often is if you look back to Argentina during some of their poor years in the Rugby Championship, where they simply went left to right, left to right, left to right, you end up with this situation where maybe the opposition lets you get the ball kind of 40 metres away, you make a carry, you don't get anywhere, and your nine is lunging a 40 metre shuttle every phase just to go left and right, pivoting across the pitch. And so you're never ever going to get quick ball that way. Whereas Ireland, we think of expansive as being the most beautiful form of attack, but Ireland are basically just saying, okay, we're just going to play within this kind of 20 metre grid every look. But we're just going to use little disguised passes, and then we're going to.
But we're going to use 5 passes to get there.
And also everyone cleans, even Jack Crowley. The only guy I haven't seen clean is Hugo Keenan, and for obvious reasons, and maybe Mac Hansen. Maybe he tries, but like Henshaw, Aki, Lowe, these guys clean rucks just like a forward.
Yeah, it's about the detail as well. Like, one of the things I would encourage anyone at home, if you're watching a game that perhaps you don't care too much about who wins, just spend a while looking at the rucks, and particularly look at what the ball carrier does when he gets tackled. Because at grassroots level, we're kind of used to getting tackled and flopping on the ball and hoping our teammates drive over us so that the ball's at the back. But if you watch these guys, everything they do as soon as they hit the ground is to get the ball as far back as they possibly can. And then you've got the arriving players, and their job isn't just to smack whatever they see, it's to hit the person who's the biggest risk and then secure the ball off the back of that. And so if you just watch 10 minutes of a game and just focus on what's happening at those looks, there's so much detail that goes into that. And you mentioned earlier how the Lolly Fisher, he's absolutely brilliant at this kind of stuff, and also he gives away loads of it for free on his Instagram. And you can just go and see what he's focusing on in those breakdowns, because there's as much detail in that as there is in a really beautiful, crisp strike move off a line-out.
Get Laurie going on arriving players, and you'll be there for hours, and it's fascinating to listen to it. It really is. We've got to cover a really important thing about teams, Sam, and it's fictional teams in particular. And I can't believe you picked Harry on a wing. Harry has no grounds, no qualifications, no credibility to play on a wing in his dreams.
I ran the third leg of the 400 relay when I was 14.
Mate,
I knew that. So that's why
you've got a throat that sounds like it's been rolled by a road crew. You cannot play wing.
Cape Town City Championships, third leg. I lost about 7 meters.
It's a very good point. So, in my defence, well, I probably should have done, because I put referee Luke Pearson the second row. So that maybe would have been the obvious switch.
It was more spiritual, wasn't it? It was more like the soul.
It was more spiritual. Yeah.
It was a merit selection, right? I got you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mate, hopefully we've given you some fodder for your next round of fictional teams of the year. We will certainly try and fit you into the 89ers, our new team. I'm not sure, Harry, where you're going to slot Sam in, although with a beard and, dare I say, a bald head like that, I'm feeling like it's going up front.
He's like one of these modern coaches who's a coach player on the field, talking to refs, handing out water, doing physio.
Yeah.
Jack of all trades, but a master of none. I do, as my dad likes to remind me, I do look like the entire Georgian rugby team. So I could go.
It's so
Fair
true.
enough.
Yeah. It's so true. Mate, look, it's been fantastic. This has been a really, really great chat. I hope everyone listening gets something out of this, because I'm quite sure we have already, just in our little chat. You can find Sam on the Twitters at Sam L Stands Up. You can watch him on Beyond 80 on RugbyPass Plus. It's just been fantastic, mate. Thanks so much for giving us some time on the 8-9.
Johan, come back for July internationals or rugby championship. We'd love to rip them up in the Southern Hemisphere.
Absolutely, I'd love to. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate everything you two guys do as well. So thank you very much for having me.
This is the 8-9 Combo Rugby Podcast. I'm Brett McKay. This is Harry Jones. And, mate, how good to have Sam Larner back on the pod again. That was a great chat. I absolutely love that.
Good young man, Sam. I'm going to go ride with him in the hills. Look forward to it. What I like about Sam is that he really has time for anyone who is into rugby. It doesn't matter. It's not about stepping stones or is this good for my career. And so I think in a strange way that's actually redounded to his benefit. I think people see that he's an honest broker and he's really trying to figure out a way to explain this game we love.
Yeah, and because ultimately everyone wins by doing that. The more we all talk about the game and explain it to each other, the better off we all are. So absolutely find him on the Twitters. He's great to engage with, great to read, even if you just want to read. He explains things so well. So find Sam Larner on the Twitters, and you'll be better off as a rugby fan, no doubt. But something we're a little different that we are doing this year is that we're dedicating 10 minutes plus or minus every week to flick through the various competitions around the world and touch on the major talking points as we go through them. Obviously, in terms of Six Nations, touching on the 3 games from last weekend, Wales suffered their first winless campaign in 21 years with that 24-21 loss to Italy in Cardiff. Italy now 2 straight in Cardiff in recent years, so they're going great. First time they've avoided the wooden spoon since 2015. Ireland made it back-to-back titles with their 17-13 win over Scotland at the Aviva in your absence on Saturday. And then in Le Grange, a late Thomas Ramos penalty helped France win 33-31 in Lyon over England, which saw them finish 2024 campaign in second spot. And even, they were 4th a week ago, and I didn't actually give much thought to the chances of them finishing that high.
Yeah, it's still weird though, because those three teams were just stacked. And in fact, if there were no bonus points, Italy would have been above Scotland, because they only lost twice. So we've covered Ireland. Ireland cut down a bit on the kicks. Ruck's speed was still high. Fixed their line out. Scrum was iffy. It's unsure how good they really were in this tournament, because
Scotland defended pretty well, I will say.
It looked like their attack can be blunted a little bit. So obviously the Box and All Blacks will look at that very closely, as well as Australia, on how to cut it at source. And it looks like they're going to have to do some refreshing on the attack. But the defense of Ireland is what won them the championship again. They were just too solid. But I would say the French still look at it as a bit of a failure. They did bring in this idea of guys that are too big to play rugby. They're all on the French team. You have Antonio, you have Maufu, you have Roman, you have these mercurial outside backs. And then you have Thomas Ramos, who's just doing crazy stuff along with Legaric. Yeah.
Has he ever missed a kick, Ramos?
He looks like never missing. He actually has missed some this season, but he looks such the form. If you want to copy a guy, it's almost like Louis Oosthuizen on this golf swing. It's just there's just a metronomic look, Yeah. But they were Marmalade in Marseille. They were lack of luster in Lille. They were just sheer luck in Edinburgh, and then they had the spark in Lyon. But Le Crunch did actually deliver. That was a great match for the neutral. Yeah. I would say the 33 was good. The 31 was probably pretty bad for Sean Edwards. They let in 14 tries in the tournament. England was kind of an odd journey. I do think they believe in Borthwick. I think they found something with Freeman, the Ollies, George Martin. There's something there. I think their schedule for the rest of the year is murder. They play the All Blacks 3 or 4 times. They play the Springboks and the Wallabies. But I do think they would look at that as okay. I think Scotland is the one where people are grumbling. I was in Scotland. I was there for over a week, and people are saying, "Why is it when we have this level of talent? It's the best Scottish talent assembled. We have 7-year coach.
It's the best Irish team, or it's the
there's that too, but also Wales snuck a trophy out in 21. Why does there no trophies in Scotland's cabinet? What I said is I think the coach is almost too grounded. Sometimes you need a madman at the top. Maybe you need someone kicking chairs. Italy, you look at the role of a coach change. Same players losing by 90 and 60 a year, 6 months ago, and now they were one kick away from finishing with 3 wins.
But it's not just the national team in Italy though. Like Benetton's been going great in the ERC this year, and then I saw it pointed out on Twitter over the weekend. Look at Zebre as well, and they're down the table, but they've got a heap of losing bonus points, and so they are in,
and their under 20s have been providing a pathway. So Scotland has no under 20 game right now. Wales under 20 looks woeful. So there is something about that. Yeah. But can we talk about Warren Gatland? Warren Gatland pulled off I just hate this kind of work. He goes out and he says, "I submitted my resignation to the CEO."
I offered a resignation,
and she denied. So first of all, we don't know if that actually happened. We don't know what she really said. We don't know what her vibe was when she said whatever she said. But it effectively makes himself the CEO. I mean, he's basically cornered her. Now she has to come out and say, no, it's not what I said, which she's not going to do. No. And I think it was, and he's taking, the lion's share of the money that could go to the grassroots that he says is not producing players for him. I think there's something about the retread coach, whether it was Eddie Jones, whether it was there's something about that can sometimes not work.
I was going to say there's a lot of Eddie Jones about that when you say it like the way you've said it. It's interesting.
Like maybe too big for the union himself. And maybe they should just cut their losses and go new.
And Wales have gone all in. They have said no, we do not accept your resignation because we need you to do a job. So it's very McLennan areas. In Super Rugby Pacific, mate, the Crusaders are still winless after going down to the unbeaten Hurricanes on Friday night, and 0-4 is now officially their worst ever start in the history of the organisation, which I can't believe I'm saying that a month into Super Rugby.
That was a good match.
It was a good game.
But I noticed someone said something that there's only one player from a year ago.
Yes, if you look at the team that won Super Rugby Pacific last year to what's on the field now, maybe David Havili is the common factor.
I think Christie, the open
maybe
side.
yeah. Quentin Strange
it.
was there or thereabouts as well. There's not many. At all. So the Queensland Reds are definitely the best of the Australian sides after their big win over the Melbourne Rebels. The Brumbies found another win, but they're still scrappy. I think you've got to say that about the Blues as well. And Moana Pacifica, they might be the best team in the competition at the moment without a permanent home.
I'm never tipping the Force again. I won't even care if the Force are playing themselves or their reserves. I'm not picking the Force. They always lose when I tip them.
Almost certainly going to pick them at some point in this week, in the next few weeks, just to get one against you.
You know what? Speaking of quick ruck speed, the Reds' ruck right now is lightning. And a lot of their success is built on that. So kudos to whoever's coaching that and whoever's delivering in the loose forwards.
Zane Hilton has arrived back from Japan to take care of the forwards, and he would be worth having a chat to at some point this year. Because
super quick.
I'd love to know what is in the Zane Hilton secret sauce for sure. I think we know who the best Australian team is. Who do you see as the best New Zealand team on current form?
Oh, and the Canes are making a bid for a really balanced team. It's pretty nice when you have TJ coming off as your backup.
Yeah, he's got a shocking haircut though. I don't know what's going on there.
Why does everyone in New Zealand hate sideburns?
I said trim those sideburns. Don't know what's going on there. The table's super tight. We'll go through the round 5 games later in the week with games of the week, which I'm really looking forward to getting back into because there is some ripping games.
Hey, ours delivered this week for sure. They delivered.
It really did deliver last week for sure. The ERC, the Premiership, and the top 14 all resume this weekend as well. And there's some good stuff. And there was some good stuff in the weekend in League One in Japan, particularly Suntory Sungoliath had to score 5 minutes after the final bell to topple Toyota for Blitz on the weekend as well. And New England Free Jacks, who you mentioned last week, beat Nolan Gold. They're the only unbeaten side in East now in Major League
They started out really badly, man. It looked bad. It was, I think they were down 14-0. And then a lot of good tries scored. A brilliant match winner. Beautiful day as well. But I do want to point out something that happened for the Dallas Jackals, who
I was going to mention this, bounced back with a big win over Anthem RC.
Just won that 68 to 28. I think. Yeah, so 4 points away from a centurion of points by both sides. For a brief moment, the Anthem made a big comeback in the second half before they were buried.
Yeah, was the Jackals Mall consultant nearly sacked for a second time this season?
No, I'm good now. Everything came through. If we could just keep playing
everything.
If we just keep playing the anthem over and over, I'm going to be set.
We'll be fine. We'll be fine. Make sure that you are subscribed to us so that you do pick up the latest edition of Games of the Week when it comes out later this week, where we touch on the games in each comp around the world that kind of stands out to us. So be sure to find that on your pod platform of choice. Great. Mate, some news of the last 7 days to wrap things up for episode 6 this week. Ulster have confirmed the signing of Werner Koch from the Sharks next season, the former Sevens Player of the Year. Obviously, we touched on George North's announcement last week that he'll retire from Test rugby. 47 tries in 120 tests for Wales, so he's third on the all-time Welsh caps list behind
one of the best ever.
Jones.
One of the best ever.
One of the greats. And I love that he was presented at some point in the last week with just that iconic shot of him lifting Israel Folau in the 2013 Lions series and just carrying him downfield like he did. It was just one of the great memories of that series. Sale Sharks.
That is hard to say.
It is when you do it like that. Sale Sharks have signed Fijian captain Waisea Thalavu from Toulon ahead of next season, which then over the weekend sparked speculation about Manu Tuolangi. Well, boom. French broadcaster on Monday night Australian time, French broadcaster Canal Plus this is, confirmed Monday Australian time that England centre Manu Tuolangi has signed with Bayonne for 2 years. So the
good
French
signing for
exodus
Sale, by the way.
continues.
That's a beautiful signing.
Absolutely. New South Wales Waratahs centre Isaiah Parisi looks like they're going to be the latest Australian to head to Leicester Tigers and join Dan McKellar's growing Australian team over there. So his RA contract will end this year. Leicester have also signed Wales and Ospreys loose head prop Nicky Smith as well, and apparently they've got their sights set on a number 8 with the salary cap in the premiership lifting to £6.4 million next year. So they'll be chasing a big name from somewhere.
If I might just note for our Australian listeners, it seems like if Izzy's being coached by Dan McKellar and playing with Andre Pollard on his inside, Freddie Stewart behind him, being captained by the Pumas captain, it seems like really good preparation for Test rugby. Yeah. I'd say let's start picking guys that are well within the Wallaby world before they go play for someone else, like Tupelo2 for Scotland.
Yeah, it's not a bad shout. I'm sure it'll be discussed. And my tickets have gone on sale for the HSBC Sevens 2024 Grand Final Series, which we played end of May, early June at the Civitas Metropolitano Stadium in Madrid. Puts the best 32 men's and women's rugby sides into one competition for 3 days of, it's basically winner take all, and promotion relegation gets decided as there. Like, it's cutthroat. So it'll be the last opportunity to see Olympic qualified teams ahead of Paris as well, and tickets are available for €8.50 from Sevens.com.
I love Madrid.
SVNS.com.
I love the way you're pronouncing that, but I also love Madrid. And just want to say to anyone in Madrid, if you're at a eatery or a bar there and you knock anything, they're going to give you a beer every time you tap the counter. So just beware of that.
Okay, good to know.
Experience I've learned.
Mate, I think that is us done for another episode of the 8-9 combo. How do you rate episode 6? How are we going?
It was cerebral. It was both raucous and brainy at the same time. I thought really it's good to have someone on who wants to dig in there. I think the whole format of pods is supposed to be able to dig in there. So hopefully everyone enjoyed that. And there's really, even off camera, Sam just keeps talking about stuff. He's a ball of fire. He's prolific. Great. Go on every place you can find him. He's got a book coming out in a couple of years he's working on. That sounds brilliant. We'll let him talk about that. But he's got fingers in every pie.
He's got many fingers in many pies, and they're all worth it. So do check him out. Thanks to all of you out there in Rugby Pod World. How am I going talking this week? Who have found
Are you drunk, man?
I don't know. Maybe. If you're new to our work, then welcome. Obviously, if you know us from the last few years, then thanks so much for following us over. And speaking of following the pods on all the socials, check out the show notes in for the full listing. But at 8-9 Combo on Twitter, on Insta, on YouTube, on TikTok. So give us a follow, a like, a subscribe, and interact with the pod directly. But also make sure you do please rate and share any previous ratings and reviews you might have left for us in our former home. Obviously, haven't followed over, so if your platform allows it, please do leave a rating or a review. And if you're on Spotify, check out the built-in Q&A to every episode. And I think we're up to well over 50 5-star reviews across Spotify and Apple as well. Harry and I remain on the socials in our usual places, and while you'll find Harry's written musings on the Raw a couple of times a month, you find me with an Australian column on RugbyPass each week. So again, do like, follow, subscribe on your pod platform of choice, and make sure you get every new episode as soon as it drops, including Games of the Week later this week when we're back. This is the 8-9 combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realize you needed, coming from the podcast double act you already had. I'm Brett McKay. He's Harry Jones, and we'll be back in your ears later this week.
Come, play with us.
Please do that.
Do, 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 do.
Nice.
Do, do, do.
End record.